Wild times. Woo! What's up, everybody? Wild Times number 75.
BTG.
Everybody's favorite guest on the Wild Times is here filling in for Forrest Galante. But first, you know me. I'm the producer, Papa P. Along with me is your what are you, the professor, Retep?
Sure.
Yeah, Retep, as Forrest says. What's up, buddy?
Yes, sir. Not much. Now, does BTG stand for Big Teddy Grimace? Wait, I was going to say Big Teddy Bear, but then I realized it was a G. Never mind. Bad joke. Glad to be here. Cheers,
Well,
mates.
he's wearing purple. What's up, BTG? How are you, buddy?
I'm just glad you led with that classic Retepian joke that has no value whatsoever.
How about Big Tubby Grimace guy?
He might come to the studio.
Yeah, I'm going to say,
You can
no
be
one ever
shit
says
out
that to my face. You know, it's interesting because you look at me and you go, there's a retired wrestler past his best days, and you'd be right. But in actual fact, I'm a very cerebral creature. I'm a gentleman of letters. And what I love coming on the show and listening to you two and Forrest is it's the kind of intellectual punch in the dick that I need to stay grounded. So thank you for setting the bar so low. Here's to a great podcast.
Cheers,
Cheers.
mates. What are you
So-
guys drinking on?
Yeah, you switched it up from your gallon jug of milk and vodka that you had last time.
It seriously almost killed me. That I felt my eyes closing. I had to kind of dribble down the stairs like a boneless salamander, and I just said, "That's it. No more cocktails. I'm back on the whiskey. It's all good."
Attaboy. That looks
there
like
we
a fancy. That looks like a fancy one. So let me throw this out. Since this is your fourth, fifth, sixth time on the show, and a lot of the Brosners are constantly asking for more, I think it's official that you need a nickname. Now, I'm the producer.
I need a bro name. It's like the fifth time on SNL. You get the jacket. I feel like I'm entitled to a bro
Broly
name.
Trevor Green. Huh?
Yeah, that was-
Huh?
yeah.
Reptilian?
Well, his last name's Greive. A. B.
Yeah, I know. I said Green. It's a nickname. You fucking idiot.
What about the professional?
Yeah, I like that. It bespeaks a certain dignity and purpose otherwise lacking in this voyage. I also thought the neck bromancer was good. And,
I like that.
I'm going to keep that for the After Dark episodes that we do in person.
Oh, sweet. We're doing After Dark.
Professional it is. I'm honored to take that mantle, and I shall attempt to serve it, with a similar level of injustice as Retep does.
Let's let the Brosners decide. Pop it in the comments on the YouTube or the iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Tweet it at us. I don't know, whatever you do. So it's been a while, Bradley. What has been kind of going on in that world besides the fact that it appears that you're painting a wall?
Right. So I don't know if you can you see the roof? So this just happened. The roof just started leaking and the ceiling in my study. So that was last night. So we've had contractors in today. So yeah. Not exactly. It's not a home renovation show, although I'm prepared to host that if you would like. But I figure that the physical chaos and the intellectual dishabille of this show is kind of on par. But yeah, it's basically a shit fight right here, right now.
So you're calling the show then a shit fight, is what you're saying?
No, I'm merely affirming what everybody else thinks of it. And
fair enough.
I've been busy. It's still, with the rise of COVID infections, we've been playing it safe. We have an unvaccinated toddler, so we don't want to. We had some friends whose toddler got really, really sick, and so we've been extra careful. But been working on a few projects. Got a very big thing to announce next month on Netflix. But that's all I can say. But I will come back on the podcast for the premiere. I can promise you that. But
in about four or 5 weeks, something like that. You'll come back to announce.
Whenever you'll have me.
Beautiful,
sweet.
Well, let me ask you this because you brought up COVID, and I know that you know more about this stuff than I do. When a virus, so we've got all these variants, right? You got the Delta variant. Now people are talking about the Mu variant. Mm-hmm. When a virus mutates, what is the purpose of the virus mutating?
Well, first of all, everything mutates.
Sure.
Every living thing evolves in real time, and we get used to these incredibly long timelines of millions and billions of years. But in fact, genetic change, omnidirectional genetic change, is a very real thing. You probably know about this, but we've seen gene exchanges laterally through the food chain between species of fish. We've measured that one fish picks up a genetic attribute previously only belonging to another fish.
I had not seen that. That's actually mind-blowing. Say that again, because that is crazy.
Okay, so I'm one of the 4 people who watched the Natalie Portman movie Oblivion, right?
Yes.
If you haven't watched it, maybe don't. But there is an element of truth in that, in that genetics, genes can be swapped from animal to animal and from plant to animal and vice versa. We're constantly evolving, looking for ways to have an advantage. And I don't recall the exact study. I think it was between herring and smelt, 2 very similar but different fish, and one picked up this genetic advantage in order to be a more successful species. But we also see it in an adaptation that is just on gene acquisition. So, for example, there is a little tiny sea slug, marine animal, that lives off the coast of Florida, and it's neither plant nor animal, but both, in that it actually harvests genes from the algae that it eats, and it repurposes them to allow itself, an animal, to have photosynthesis in order to generate sugars and energy. So it doesn't have to eat as much, and it's remarkable, right?
And if you look superhero shit right there.
100% legit superhero shit. And if you pull it up, it looks like a sort of a leaf made out of gelatinous jade. You're not even sure if it's an animal or it's quite a remarkable thing. So getting back to the original question, which is never really the purpose of this show, in this instance, it's bacteria, viruses. Everything is looking for a genetic advantage. Everything is looking to be more successful. And sometimes the change, in every case, the changes are largely accidental. But when one succeeds, which is classic Darwinism, so as opposed to the Lamarckian theory, which is you desire a change to, for example, the difference is very simple. You have a giraffe, right? Mm-hmm. The Lamarck principle is that the giraffe wants to be taller. Well, that's that little amazing little sea slug. Isn't it beautiful?
Beautiful. It looks like a vagina.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. It's beautiful.
Okay.
Lovely.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? Sorry, dude.
No, I'm glad that you love She-Hulk. That's great.
Don't know what that word means, but okay.
The Lamarckian principle is that the animal that preceded the giraffe wanted to reach higher into the thorny acacia to get the leaves, and that desire produced over time the long neck that realized its ambition. That we know that's not true. The Darwinian model is that somehow a genetic shift resulted in an animal that had a slightly longer neck. It was more successful. It bred and other ones and so on. That principle applies to everything. Right. And now that we know there can be lateral gene exchanges, the whole world of shift and change is bigger than we ever imagined. And that's exactly what happens with the virus. It evolves between hosts for various different reasons, different temperatures, different defenses, different drugs, different antibodies. Everything's fighting to survive down to an atomic level. And therefore, now we have the mu variant, which is more resistant to things that stopped the Delta variant, which was more resistant to things that stopped the original version of the virus.
Theoretically, a virus, you would think a virus that's very, very deadly, a virus shouldn't want its host to die, right? Because then it dies inside the host. So don't viruses typically evolve to become less deadly to the host over time?
That is not necessarily correct. It is often the case, and that's a very successful model, but no. You're inferring a parasitic relationship. This is a search and destroy mission. And so we can move on. If you can think about fungi and moving through decaying bodies. Right. They're there to consume and to move on. They're not there to shake hands and sing songs. It's a very different dynamic.
Sure. So does this mean that Noah had 2 of each virus variant on the ark?
Is that where we're going? Okay.
Because my understanding was that
they can
everything
come
that's
into
alive
being.
today.
we laugh about the Noah thing because it's like, what is it? It was like 4,000 years ago, and somehow they picked up to a pair of everything, even though there was some only in Europe and Eurasia, and they transported it to a mountain in Turkey. It's got to be the most poorly organized, documented wildlife breeding release program in the history. Would never get funded today. Would never get funded today.
I don't think so.
No.
And I don't know what happened to all the kangaroos and things that weren't even there. No, the answer to your question is things exist today that didn't exist yesterday, let alone 1,000 years ago, let alone 1,000,000 years ago, etc. So many things can come into being in that time. And they may not have originally been a negative. There may have been something that we could have, like the various bacteria and the various fungal spores that we carry in our body all the time. That's a certain degree of passive mutualism, but they could easily evolve into something horrific in that time and become a mortal enemy, quite literally.
Did you guys see what happened in Nashville or in Tennessee this week?
No.
What happened?
So this was all over the news. I thought you would have loved this, Peter.
I've never heard of it.
So a few nights ago, there was a huge explosion somewhere near Nashville, Tennessee. Massive explosion, lit up the entire sky. And there's a bunch of different like ring cameras and security cameras that get this. Shook everybody's houses, right?
Yeah.
So the police got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls. The Geological Survey did not register an earthquake. And nobody knows what the cause of the explosion was or what caused it. No one has any clue what this event was.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no debris from space found. There were no training missions going.
But it's on video, the actual explosion all over the place.
Well, you don't see the explosion. You just see the entire sky light up. And, people for miles and miles, their houses shook and the floors rattled. They thought an earthquake had happened. So, of course, immediately, the people that Peter hangs out with on Reddit were like, this was some sort of something. The aliens did something.
Yeah.
But I found it really fascinating, and apparently in 2002 there was a similar event in Charlotte, North Carolina. What are your initial thoughts? Is this definite aliens, or what are we talking about here?
Me or BTG?
This is a podcast. It's whoever answers first. Same rules as the first 74.
I just want to put out there that I didn't realize you could go on Reddit after you've been banned from 4chan.
I'm also banned from Reddit, but I've circumvented that ban. Fuck you, Reddit. I'm smart. Eat my dick.
None of that's true. So I didn't know about this, but I have a theory. The combination of the concussion waves and the light reminds me of cavitation. Specifically, in the natural world, you're familiar with pistol shrimp and some of these. Okay, the ones that kill with a sonic blast by clapping their pinchers so hard together that they create pure energy, and there's a burst of light between their claws, produces an incredible temperature hotter than the surface of the sun, and a resulting shockwaves and an air bubble. So they never actually use their weaponized pinchers to actually grab and tear until the thing's dead. It's the shockwave that actually kills the fish or whatever they're preying upon. And this principle, a lot of people watch, you're watching Top Gun movies and things like that. Hollywood has completely miscued everybody on how missiles, anti-tank weapons, and anti-aircraft weapons work. They almost never, ever hit the actual target. They're not designed to. They're designed to blow up near enough that the shrapnel goes through it from a distance, from about, it could be several tennis courts away. So this idea of Maverick just putting this, supersonic phallic stamen up the anus of a MiG never happens. Never happens. It blows up about 100 yards away and shreds the jet. Remember, there's fuel kept in the wings, and that's how it goes. So proximal strike.
That's crazy. Wait, so you were in the Air Force, right? Was that your branch of the military?
I will fucking
Special Forces.
You're an Air Force guy, right?
Do I look like I own pleated polyester
There's
pants?
a weight limit on fucking aircraft, dude, especially in the military.
You know what? Here's an embarrassing story. I was doing a project, and I wanted to renew my skydiving license. And America has some of the best drop zones in the world. And particularly, I think, in Ohio and Arizona, these huge airfields with very consistent air temperatures and no wind, and you can just jump. And I called up and I said, hey, I want to renew my license. I said, great. I said, I got my own rig. And they said, no problem. They said, well, what we do for renewing your license, if you haven't jumped for a little while, is we want you to jump on our rigs. And they said, how big are you? And I'm like, I'm 6.5 feet tall, roughly 300 pounds. They said, no, we have
Really?
nothing. And I said, I've got my own rig. I'll just take my own rig that was built for me.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm a big unit, but there are plenty of guys who are bigger than me in the service. And we carry our own body weight in toys. We get out of the plane. We don't jump out in a Speedo. So,
That's a terrible mental picture, by the way.
So we jump out. I wasn't as heavy then as I am now, but even then I'm like 240, 250, and I'm carrying up to over 300 pounds when I was doing heavy machine guns.
Dude, that's fucking crazy.
Right, and so so this parachutes carry a lot. Anyway, they wouldn't get me up in the air. They said I'm too big for their rigs, which I resent, and I thank you for bringing that up.
That's fucked up. But I find that what you're just saying about the way that the missiles.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something I should know with my just general level of curiosity about how things work. I never knew that. I assumed that the missile hit the other aircraft and that caused the explosion. So is the missile timed to explode at a certain time, or how do they control when it explodes?
It's got to be proximity, right?
That's right. In that case, well, there are many. First of all, you're talking about the fuse system in the broad sense. And so there are, first of all, on radar, these are smart weapons. They know when they're close enough. They're reading. Remember, they follow the jet by reading the heat signature. And so when they get within a certain distance, they blow up, and that does the job. But there are many different ways of doing it. So, for example, in artillery, there are many different types of ordnance. We have a thing called VT, or variable timer, also known as prox, for proximity. But you can set it, and artillery guys are obviously smarter than grunts like myself, and they just do the math. Okay, they have calculators now, special ones, but gun calculators. But they're doing the math for exactly how long it takes. And if they want to do an air burst, then they time it so it's a split second before it would hit the ground. That's when it goes off and it showers everything in hot liquid metal death. Or for a bunker buster, that's the opposite. Now it's not going to go off until a split second after it hits the ground. And so now you've got something about the mass of a VW. Odd that I picked that particular vehicle, but only the size of, say, 10 watermelons, and that gets driven into the substrate, and then of course it goes up. But there are many different ways of doing it. So when I was a heavy machine gun and an anti-armor specialist, and we would use all sorts of different types of rockets and ordnance. And one of the ones that's interesting is that it evolved because it's very much like nature. It's like the old archetype of the better mousetrap problem. But nature goes back and forth trying to build defenses and build better offense in order to eat or to not be eaten. And so with tanks, what we had was initially like a torpedo, which mostly do hit the target, but then again, they don't have to underwater. But that impact detonates the fuse, which detonates the ordnance. But what we did was in armor, tanks were getting thicker and thicker armor to stop these bombs from blowing up and blowing through them. And so what we did was we invented a weapon called an ordnance called a swash head. It's like a flat-headed, missile type thing, a flat-headed projectile, and it's not designed to go through. It hits the tank, pancakes out, creates a concussion wave, which breaks off a scab of the inside of the armor of the tank, and the inside of the armor of the tank becomes the weapon and blows up everybody inside.
That's just pure evil. That's an evil thing for someone to have thought of. Yeah,
I know.
Good God.
Retep has to live with that. And,
I know.
Then we have
I'm living, man.
And then we have a thing called these hyperkinetics, these standoff probes. And what happens there? You see these rockets, and the end of them, like those pink river dolphins, the baji, in the Amazon, has a nose like that, okay, like the boto. And what happens is it's a standoff probe. So a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a millisecond, the standoff probe hits the actual armored vehicle. It pushes in, it crushes a piezoelectric crystal, like a grain of sugar. That detonates the weapon. And then in that infinitesimally small amount of time, the charge is shaped, explodes, becomes a perfect tear-shaped blob of pure energy, and that just drills through everything. But the point is, that evolution of weaponry in combat is very much, there it is. That is a lot like a Carl Gustav anti-armor round with a piezoelectric crystal standoff. That's what we have. So these shrimp, and remember, you don't just get the ones that are in the ocean, these giant peacock mantis shrimps. There are some, there's one called the Pink Floyd shrimp here in the Americas, these beautiful pink claws. And again, it just snaps its little pinches together so hard, you get a little piece of pure sunshine below the water and kills everything.
Dude,
and I think
so cool.
Something of that effect is what happened out east with that mysterious light followed by the earthquake-like shuddering.
So
like
it's just
something
like some
natural.
really obese guy farted. Something like that.
And lit it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, of all we've talked about this actually recently because I used the pistol shrimp for one of my animal superpowers as Retep just spilled his drink all over his desk.
I'll be right back.
I would say it's probably my favorite. I think that's like the animal power I would want if I was going to morph into a superhero.
But every time you snapped your fingers, everyone in the room died.
I could just do that. Yeah, exactly. The problem is I have a bad temper, so I might not be able to control myself. I would just constantly be snapping.
Well, also, you too would have to suffer. You'd have to be wearing some sort of protection. This brings me to the case of the bulldog bat, and it's this shrieking bat.
Yeah. Isn't it like the loudest sound produced in the animal kingdom above ground or something like that?
It's the loudest mammal.
Okay.
I think overall volume record still goes to either a tie between the Walker's cicada and the greengrocer cicada, but in terms of pound for pound. But the mammal, it's just so funny because yes, it's this incredibly deafening shriek, but what's awesome about it is in the act of shrieking, its own muscles naturally compress its own hearing, so it is deaf to the shriek going out.
That's
so it hurts
cool.
everybody else, but doesn't hurt itself. You would need a similar thing to protect you from your pistol shrimp fingers.
Well, Bradley, as an author and a writer of screenplays and stuff, I mean, you know, we've both dabbled in that world enough to know that if we turned in a script where like someone had that power, they would just be like, "That's not believable." Like, no, it actually exists in the animal kingdom. This
is why I hate Spider-Man. It's just like the lamest spider qualities.
I know. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they didn't even take like the cool like. He should have been a trapdoor Spider-Man or something like that. Like something that did one more thing that was cool besides just the web. That's all they gave him.
Yeah, just the web. And he doesn't even use it in special ways. Like, you know, you think about a golden orb spider that has a big globule of sticky web, like a bolus, and he throws it.
Exactly.
I've never seen him do that. The ones that use them that have this, it's like a circular lasso, and they throw it forward with just four limbs. Also, what about the fact that they use their pedipalps for sex and break it off inside the female so no other male can do that? I didn't see him doing that.
I think they shot that scene and then they were just like they got the NC-17 rating when his dick broke off, you know? How does he
only have two eyes?
I know. Well, dude, this is a great segue to a game that I wanted to play with you here, Bradley. So last week on the podcast, we played a new game show that I invented, and I'm the host of. If anyone from Game Show Network's watching, I'm available. I will do it. It's called, can I get a game show jingle, Peter? He's so flustered because he just spilled his entire gin and soda all over his fucking keyboard.
Really?
Welcome to episode number 2 of Is BTG Smarter Than an Idiot? Much like popular game show Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? What we're going to do here is see if are you a biologist technically?
I think so.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Is a biologist smarter than the layman, Retep? So what I've done here is I've chosen, Bradley, you had a show, a very fun show on Animal Planet called Little Giants that was really about tiny creatures. A lot of them were insects.
So all the questions are okay. I see how
these are all about insect superpowers, things like that. We're going to alternate who goes first. There's one point awarded.
New drink.
Oh, you got the new drink. That's why he was gone for so long. All right, Brosners, play along. This is a lot of fun. You might learn something. Use it at a bar to a member of the same sex, opposite sex to try to impress them. Probably won't work because people don't want to talk about insects when they're out at the bar. All right, here we go. Retep, you're first since you're the idiot. Houseflies, the common housefly, finds sugar by using its feet. Its taste receptors are on its feet.
We learned that in the last one, yeah.
How many times more sensitive than the human taste bud is the housefly's ability to taste through its feet? How many times more sensitive than the human tongue?
1,000.
Okay, Bradley?
Wow. I don't know, but
that'd be weird if you did.
I don't think that you would spend so much time walking on dog shit if your feet were super sensitive in terms of
Unless
taste.
you like the taste.
That's a very broad palette. Ooh, sugar or fecal slurry out of that dog.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 100 times.
The correct answer. Retep gets a point. 10 million times more sensitive. And just so you know, the source for all of these is the Smithsonian Institute. So I actually believe this. This is not just some stupid blog.
Extraordinary. So what I'm hearing then is that their taste is so sensitive that there's actually a deeper level of culinary appreciation for dog shit than I had ever imagined.
And not just dog shit.
I'm missing out.
You are. Let's see if we can. If we can get those genes in your body, and you can walk around with taste buds that are 1,000,000 times more powerful in your hands and feet.
On my battle scarred scaly feet.
Yeah, I have a friend who's probably one of my dumbest friends, but he claims to be a super taster. He says this is a thing that exists, that he's a super taster, and that it's been proven, and he's been diagnosed as having these wildly effective taste buds. And he has the diet of like me when I was 13 if I got to plan dinner every night. Like he'll have 7-Eleven taquitos for dinner every night.
Cheetos pizza.
Exactly.
Mountain
Bagel
Dew.
bites. Yeah.
I like to think I have a decent palate. I feel like my sense of taste is one of the few senses I have left. But once you get a toddler, if it's on a plate, that's dinner.
Yeah.
That's just the rule.
Right.
And I just point out, in terms of being a human fly, I don't recall Jeff Goldblum in The Fly again embracing those qualities.
Exactly.
Of
They keep fucking this up. The guys that write these movies.
He had the hairy back and everything, and which I have, and I'm like, that doesn't make you a fly, mate.
I think just mentally, the transformation as being a human turning into a fly, you're really worried about some other things than.
No, but you wouldn't be able to think about anything else. You would be having a 10 million times more sensitive taste of sweaty sock all day long. You'd kill yourself in seconds.
You would have to. You would
all right, number two.
It's bad. It's
Bradley,
bad.
you're up first. While gathering food, the typical North American bee flies how many miles in a single day?
Wow.
I'm going to say about 25 miles.
Okay, Peter.
But usually it's no more than a 7-mile return trip. So 14 is more common, but up to 25. And I'll also say that relative to mass, that's the equivalent of the space shuttle of the Apollo mission going to the moon and back like 4 times.
Amazing. I mean, even just that's amazing. I'm just going to give him the point no matter what you say, Peter, but go ahead.
BTG might want to hold off his explanations until after I answer because I'm going with 25.1.
This is...
You are Price is Righting me. Wow.
Sure is.
I'm going to award you each a point because technically Retep gets the point, but the bonus fact get you a point on this game show.
Okay.
Up to 60 miles in a single day.
Right, but that's unusual and requires a tailwind. I actually do know this because I wrote a book on insects, and the average is 14.
Pat,
when you write
you're
your next
offending our
book-
guests.
When you write your next book, can you hire me to do some math stuff for you? Because I love doing that shit.
You know what? I would love that. And the great thing about any kind of biological math is you just, and this with Little Giants, it's you give up. I don't think this is a game that exists in America, but in Commonwealth countries, in Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, when you're little kids, you used to get these things called trump cards, and they would have like cars on them or jets or whatever. And they would have the basic statistics of the vehicle. So this is how fast, how far it can go.
Okay.
And then you would, like a trading card game, and you would try to get, so I'd pick a fight with you because I had the Concorde, and it would be the fastest domestic aircraft. That's what I would go for. But it was that kind of trading game. I feel like that needs to exist, trump cards, with insects and with mammals, because there's so many cool ways of bending the math.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree. And we may have an
play.
announcement about something like that at some point soon. That's all I can say.
Sneak preview.
Peter, you're up first here.
Great.
The queen of a termite species, and this is a certain species of termite that lays the most eggs per day.
Okay.
How many eggs in a single day might the queen of those termites lay? How many eggs in just one day? I mean, you got to think about the fact that you get termites in a house. It's bad. It's bad news.
Yeah. I mean, they're tiny. I mean, the queen is probably 8 times the size of a regular termite. I'm going to say that she lays up to 5,000 eggs a day, Pat.
Thank you, Bradley Trevor Greive.
That's a tough one. Again, this is a specific termite. I'm assuming it's that giant species from Africa with the big head, the big bulldog termites. Is that what it is?
It doesn't say. It just says the species that. But you're talking about the one where you see just the huge mounds. Huge termite mounds.
We have a civil one in Australia, northern Australia, and also in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm gonna go over on that one because. Remember, they're not giving birth to live young. It's just little tiny eggs. And even as she's pumping out one, she's making another. I'm going to double that estimate.
10
Point to Bradley Trevor Greive. They will lay up to 40,000 eggs in a single day.
There it is. Tied it up. Bradley, right now you have the same intelligence as a layman.
Savor that moment.
It's tasty.
I think we can let the audience decide who knows more about insects. But all right, I like this one here. This is a good one.
Definitely not the Smithsonian. You okay, Pat? Are you frozen, or are you just at a loss?
No, I'm not
for
frozen.
words?
I'm just reacting to your interludes. Okay. This is just a multiple choice. So this is going to be worth 2 points if you get this right.
Wow.
Are there more species of birds or ants in the world?
Wow,
What's
that's
up your
tough.
first?
Birds. I'm going birds just because I know that cats in the U.S. kill billions of birds. So it's just, I know that fact, and this just translates. I'm going birds.
It's all robins.
What is the correlation between body count and species diversity?
I've seen just a lot of birds. I've only seen 1 or 2 types of ants.
Red and black. That's it.
The problem is that I am actually also going to go birds. But the reason I'm doing that is because you said species.
That's correct.
And I'm going to say there are a lot of ant subspecies, but not a lot of ant species relative to bird species. So that's my answer.
You are both correct. But here's why it's interesting. There's only 200 more species of bird in the world than species of ant.
Wow.
See, I would have thought there was like 50 species of ant. I would not have thought there was almost 9,000 ant species in the world.
Well, what's interesting about this, though, and there's 2 aspects to it, is one, that an enormous number of bird species are now extinct. whereas ant numbers largely have continued to remain the same.
Interesting.
So I think how it is today is not how it was once upon a time. Remember that the flying creatures are once the smartest things in the world. So it was that's one aspect. The other thing is the inside knowledge I have on this pertains to I was in Fiji, and it was probably the most extravagant thing I've ever done in principle. I flew from Australia to Fiji for one dinner just to lobby government ministers to help us save this species of iguana. Because remember, Fiji is the only place other than South America that has iguanas.
No, I didn't know that.
Two primary species. Yeah, the crested and the striped iguana. And there's a whole backstory that involves Tom Hanks and a whole bunch of goats. I'll cover that another time.
Yeah, okay. Don't say,
absolutely true.
We all know. It was you and Tom Hanks went out goat tipping, and then you got on the plane. Sure.
It's called goat jacking, but yes.
Exactly.
And anyway, but the long story short, we wanted to continue to get more reasonable rates on renting islands from the indigenous people so that we could have a goat and cat-free habitat for these ground-laying iguanas. Otherwise, the cats eat their eggs, the goats step on them, and so forth. But anyway, I'd had my dinner, did my job. The next morning, I'm waiting for my plane, I'm eating breakfast, and you wouldn't believe it, an ant researcher from the Wildlife Conservation Society out of New York, looking for a table, sits down next to me, and I just couldn't believe that they'd sent him all the way across the Pacific to study ants in Fiji. I thought it was so awesome.
Yeah, right.
One of the best surprise breakfast guests I've ever enjoyed the company of.
Nice. He's an entomologist.
He's
Sorry. Right.
Well, I think he's a pharmacologist, I think it is. I don't know.
Real quick, before you move on to the next question, Pat, last week I think we talked about scientists. They observed cockatoos making sharp tools to get open, I forget, to get into some kind of nut or something, to get their food, which was pretty dramatic finding. A little more, I looked into that a little bit, and it turns out they were making their own entire cutlery set, crafting the equivalent of a crowbar, an ice pick, and a spoon to pry open their favorite fruit, which is on par with fucking primates in terms of tool making. Like, we talked about this a little bit, and I came to the conclusion that birds are going to take over the world within 100 years. But the fact that they made multiple tools and they all had specific tasks in getting and consuming the fruit is fucking
that's crazy.
Fascinating.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I think, and no disrespect to Jane Goodall, but had anybody stopped to give some consideration to any species, sooner or later they would see tool use. I mean, even insects use tools. I mean, paper wasps use hammers, rocks as hammers to flatten out sheets of mud. You know, there are, look at the way termites mix their saliva with various sediments to create concrete. There's so many different creatures from the smallest to the largest that use tools in some fashion. Yeah. The notion that is what makes them different or special, it's absurd. Literally everything is intelligent at some level.
Agreed.
Well, speaking of which,
Or are they?
Right. Speaking of which,
that's a jab at me.
The average human can smell ammonia at about 1 part per million. Okay, and that's the specific scent that we are the most capable of smelling. So at about 1 part per million, we can smell ammonia.
Okay.
The male silk moth, Bradley, you're up first. The male silk moth can smell the reproductive chemicals of the female silk moth,
pheromones,
in the air, at a ratio of 1 part per what?
I'm going to say 1 part per trillion. So a 100 billion, or is it 1,000 billion?
A trillion would be 1,000 billion. So
it changes after a point.
I'm going to give you a point just because you understood the question, and I know Retep would have just said like blue or something like that.
I understand the question, and I disagree with Bradley in that their capability to smell the scent is more sensitive, and it's 1 part per 1,000. I'm going to say
that would be less, but Bradley, it's the point because they can smell it at 1 part per 25 trillion. They can detect in the air that a female silk moth is in heat and ready to fuck.
God. Have you ever... well, two things on that. First of all, they're using some of the scent capacities of moths to detect landmines. They're trying to... Yeah, they're trying to You know how they train those giant African cane rats to look for landmines?
The rats and dogs too, obviously.
Right, but rats are better because they don't set off the landmine. Most anti-personnel landmines have a detonation point of 5 kilograms, okay? And you think that's pretty light for a guy, but you've got to get that on the actual top of the mine. So any part of you, that's why even a side of your foot will be enough, particularly the old M14A1 toe poppers. You know, it's just a metal diaphragm, 5 kilos.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why rats are better than dogs. You want no weight and let it sniff around. But they're now trying to re-engineer the moth's ability to scent these different things and put it into a electronic device to be like a new super sniffer thing, which I find very impressive. The sense that the sensory capacities of moths in terms of scent and hearing are unbelievable. Because when you think about it, a moth is nothing but a fuzzy flying marshmallow, okay, in the real world.
Yeah.
And everything wants to eat it. Okay, there's a few poisonous ones, but otherwise everybody wants to eat them. So in order to get away, and they're slow as hell. I mean, they're about as aerodynamic as a fart. They're useless. And so that low speed, that appetizing demeanor, the only things they have in their favor is to hear, smell, or sense in other ways their predators first, and that's what makes them super special, which is super cool. The other thing is, when was the last time you really smelled a bunch of ammonia? I remember going to one of those old-fashioned circuses with a friend and her kids years ago, and this is before these things were banned. I was a lot younger. I don't support the idea of captive animal entertainment, but they had this little lion show. It was all pretty pitiful, and this lion did a dump about 2 feet in front of us and then urinated everywhere. And the ammonia smell was so great that I immediately had a headache behind my eye and the little kid started crying.
Oof.
It was
oh my God.
So potent. And so I'm actually surprised we could only smell 1 part in a million because that stuck with me for a long time.
One time I opened a package of ground beef and it just reeked like ammonia. And I was like, what the fuck? And apparently that's obviously one of the signs that it's gone bad. If it smells at all like ammonia. Same with like lobster tails, anything like that. Any detection of pneumonia, you got to throw that shit out because it's some bacteria or whatever. But, dude, it is disgusting when you open a package of meat in the old face.
I just got chills through my whole body. Like, I feel like I want to run as fast as I can away from this situation.
Do you remember when we were in Alaska, Pat, and we were like always smelling for stuff to see where the bears were? Because the bears, and particularly the males, the boars, they deliberately urinate on their legs onto their feet. It runs down their legs and their feet, and the scent glands on their feet combine with their urine and feces. And that leaves an imprimatur of who they are and how big they are. And
wow.
So, and the forest up there, the giant hemlock and spruce, it's so dense and so dark. I say to Pat even before we got there, it's like, you're going to smell them before you see them.
You did.
Half the time.
You did. I'll tell you a little bit about that, Bradley, is that, so I've done a lot of outdoor stuff, but going up to do Fear Island, I was a bit nervous, and you probably remember the first day we went out just to check, because you had been up there, we went just to check some trail cameras, and I was kind of like, I was scared, like,
why wouldn't you
I just had never willingly put myself into a situation where you're looking for gigantic Alaskan brown bear that are just everywhere.
Right.
And obviously over the course of a couple days, I started to get used to it and realized that we were, everything that you taught myself and the crew, we got used to, okay, this is what you do when the bear comes around, and they're not just vicious killers that want to attack you. Just do what you're supposed to do. So, but that first couple days when we were just sort of scouting before the rest of the crew got there, I was definitely like just a little out of my comfort zone, and I don't usually feel that way. But I remember you, myself, and your brother Elvin, your Klingit brother, we're walking around, and it was the first time that I got that smell. And it was, I don't know if you remember this, but it was very, very strong.
Yeah, no, I know. We were at the bottom of
Danger Point.
Was it that one? I thought it was when we go down. We were down the bottom, and we got out the bottom, Hook Inlet down the south side, and we got out of the boat. And I thought you smelled something then, and you went, "Yeah, no, I'm good. Let's get back in the boat."
No, maybe that. You're right. That's what it was. But it was a musk, unlike. If you ate about 45 pounds of pissed on cat litter, that's what it smelled like. I mean, it is intense.
It's strong. And remember that, and they're enormous. I mean, they're the largest carnivores on the planet, and they smell like it. I felt bad for you because you had been briefed by the production company producer, and he'd come up with me a couple of weeks early because I got up early to set out to clear some paths and also to set up some trail cams, which had to be changed every 3 days. So, and this is a huge area, and it takes days to get them all in. And long story short, he came up for like a day and a half, and he came out in the boat with us once. And it was maybe the best postcard day in the history of Alaska. I mean, it was like 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 wind. The water was glass. It was just perfect. And we showed him around, saw some bears in the distance, took some pictures. He had the best time ever. And he calls you, and I actually saw him make the call at the back of where we were staying. And he calls you and goes, "Oh, it's beautiful. You love it, blah, 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 blah. It's so amazing." He leaves. Pat arrives for an advanced thing before the crew, like a few days before the crew. And it was just every shipwreck you've ever seen. It was just howling wind, freezing cold, heavy rain, massive seas.
Fucking brutal.
And I just felt, and visibility just shrunk to nothing. And so I felt terrible for you because you got this bullshit about how perfect it was. And it's absolute hell. And I felt really bad for you.
I feel really good about it. I'm pretty happy that happened to Pat.
I respected you more for being honest that you were unnerved by these bears. I go, this guy's not an idiot. He's done wildlife stuff, and this proves it because the idiot, well, again, I don't want to bag Johnny Inches, who's my mate, but he was just like, can I pat it? I'm like, no.
Yeah, Johnny Inches was, he was quite cavalier. My thought is that he'd been in front of a camera a few times, and he knew that he was supposed to do.
I got a quick question from a layman here about the bears. If they're so pungent, they smell, and humans are out there, and you guys can detect them by the scent. Like, isn't that a disadvantage for them when they're trying to get food because they can be easily discovered by other animals, or what's up with that? They very fast.
They choose when they want to do this particular act, right?
Gotcha.
So that's my understanding, right, Bradley? They intentionally piss all over their fur.
Well, they're doing that most of the time, but you have to think of them. Think of them for a second as sharks, all right?
Okay.
So with great white sharks. I don't know if you've been shark diving or great white, whatever you're tagging, but what happens is, so I did that off the Neptunes, and we tagged about 4 or 5 sharks over 4 days, plus one mako, which was insane, a really big mako.
Wow.
But none of them were giants. They're pretty big. I mean, we got 2 sharks at about 5 meters and one at about 4.5. So that's 15 feet. They're big sharks, but not like
big, huge, a basketball hoop and a half, yo.
Plenty of shark.
Yeah.
But the thing that fascinated me about that was we're dripping in tuna oil the whole time, and occasionally a bucket of burley to try to get things going, chum as you call it here. And I expected and we're in the middle of a seal colony that's split over a series of rocks. That's what the Neptunes are, a series of rocky islets covered in fur seals.
Yeah.
And so I expected to be, having not been in the situation before, I expected sharks to be just rushing us, throwing themselves on the boat like drunk mermaids. Right. I thought it was going to be game on. Not true.
Yeah.
They sense each other. And the larger the shark, the more potent the electrical signal they give, just as true of any marine animal. And they came in pecking order, one at a time.
Wow.
So not until one shark had gone, one great white, and he was gone for a while. I say he because there's one called Mr. Grumpy, who was the big fellow who'd also lost a part of his tail. And when he was gone, then you give it an hour or so, and then another one would come in. And it was relatively orderly. Now, I'm not saying this is true
Fascinating.
of all sharks,
Right.
but these are the biggest of the predatory sharks. That's a little bit how bears are. There's a natural spacing between predators. Their stink is advertising both for sexual advantage and advertising, and predators stay out of my way. But here's the thing. Just like sharks, they choose their moment. They go downwind and they come up and they rip you to pieces. They are gifted, genetically programmed predators.
Right.
Okay, these are carnivorous gods. These are not big bumbling teddy bears who occasionally want to snack on Retep's stinking fetid meat sack.
Carnivorous gods.
Right.
These are gods of flesh and claw, and that's how they operate. Now, getting back to the shark thing, I'm in this cage, and we broke off. One of the cages got damaged, and we couldn't put it out, and the buoy's busted, and so we had to lash it to the back of the boat. Now, I get a little bit seasick. I got my middle ear damaged during a military thing back in the day, where I got a middle ear infection, and I wasn't allowed to eat or sleep for 5 days.
Brutal.
And by the time I came out of it, it really set in, and I fell over in the dark. I couldn't see which way it was up. I had to get a piece of grass and drop it and work out, okay, that's the opposite, and get up. So I get a little bit seasick as a result of the residual damage to my middle ear. So I'm getting turned around on the back of the boat. Finally, this big great white starts circling the boat, and I got my camera out. I'm trying to get that perfect shot, and I'm timing it so he's just going to be perfectly in the frame of the gap in the cage when I press the button. And I finally line it up, and he was gone. I went,
brutal.
Are you kidding me? And I'm looking around, and I look down, and he's directly under the cage, vertical, with his face maybe 2 feet away.
Oh, man.
He read me. He timed me, trying to time him.
Yeah.
And had I not been in the cage, that's when he would have gotten me. And bears are exactly the same. They work it out. They know how to hide their scent by going downwind. And they come and get you when the opportunity presents.
It's fucking terrifying. Pat, knowing that now, would you go on this trip again? Knowing that these bears are just waiting to hunt you perfectly. But
So considering that, Bradley, you spent a lot of time there in advance. The main production of that show was about 3 weeks, right? So which is amazing in TV standards. I mean, it was a nice long run. Yeah, it's one of the most fun I've ever had on a shoot, and it never wasn't raining. So it was just you were wet for 14 to 15 hours a day. We were eating really just fucking disgusting lunches. Our breakfasts and dinners were incredible, but it is gorgeous. I mean, that island and those inlets and just all the islands there, it's like breathtaking to a degree that you can't. I mean, it's as good as anywhere I've been aside from Greenland, I would say, and also just like we'd be on the little. What does Elvin have? A little whaler? Was that the boat that he had?
Yeah, he had a whaler.
Do you remember the day on the Scout in the whaler where there were just humpback whales like 30, 40 feet off the boat playing everywhere?
Was that the day we counted like 12 or 13 of them all around? Was that day? Or
Yeah, exactly.
There were 2 different days, and
beautiful.
They were just everywhere. And that's shallow. So they chase the fish in. I say shallow, it's like 40 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
And they chase the fish in, and then they can't actually easily maneuver a full dive and up. So they actually come in sideways, and it churns it all up. That's really
crazy.
Beautiful.
So they go in sideways to like churn the fish all up and get them disoriented so they can hunt it?
Yeah. Well, no. What happens is they're bubble netting by and large, but most bubble netting often in deep water, they get low, really, really deep in the water and then come their way up in like a big cone. But in this case, because it's relatively shallow and this bay, and it's a very open-faced bay, gets full of small fish and krill and a bunch of things, and they just come in kind of sideways. They do a bubble lap, but it's a more interesting maneuver because instead of just coming straight up, mouth open, which is also spectacular, and happens there a lot. I mean, we get a lot of there's a lot of other deep water places even further down south north arm of Hood Bay where we were talking about Pat's come to Jesus moment with the bears. There are deep spots. There are deep spots in there where they can come up vertically, but in this particular instance, they kind of come up on the side, and it just looks so spectacular because his mouth comes in, and it's like it kind of looks like a ship tipping over.
Yeah. We've seen there was a viral video that came out showing how the humpback whale feeds when it comes straight up, And it was just like, I mean, insane. Just like wide open jaws, boom, you know. I could imagine that like on the side, you know. Just
Right.
crazy.
And in this particular instance, so this is on the edge of Chatham Strait, on the inside passage in Alaska. And it's a great place to see mothers and calves, but also just not all the time. I mean, you never have a day where you don't see a whale, at least in my experience. I've been going there for 6 years.
Yeah.
I've never been there and not seen a whale on any given day. But that particular time, and I don't know why, I've never seen so many. Well, one day we had 7, another day we had 13, all in the same general proximity, whereas it's more common that I would see a mother and a calf some distance. You know, and at some point there was so many of them, you know, with the spume coming out of their blowholes in the distance, looking through the haze above the water. I wasn't sure if I was looking at the plume of mist from a whale or a small waterfall coming down a rock face on one of the cliffs. There was just so many. Yeah. I'm like, it can't be true. It can't be true. There can't be this many whales. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, it's heaven on earth.
Absolutely
And,
incredible.
You got if you love nature and you love it big.
Yeah,
then you got to go.
That's like
that
something you'd see on like Planet Earth or something like that, you know. But seeing it with your own 2 eyes, you know.
Or one of the shows that we just made on that region. Yes.
Yeah. So, friend of the podcast, Mark Romanoff, who is the DP on a lot of Extinct or Alive, he and I are working on a project, and I can't say too much about what it is, but he just went on a 34-foot sailboat, thanks global warming, almost all the way to the North Pole.
Wow.
He did it.
He did.
He went up the bay around the top of Greenland, huh?
Yeah, it's absolutely, the footage is just beyond stunning. He was just here last week showing me some stuff. But there's a moment where they're in this very small sail. I mean, it's not a big, huge boat, right?
No, it's small.
He fucking nailed every second of filming this. But a blue whale comes up to the surface and just starts paralleling the boat. And you can see it on the drone, and it's just incredible. I mean, this little 34-foot boat looks like a fucking Tinker toy next to this blue whale.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, kind of flanking in from the side, is another blue whale.
Wow.
And I mean, these are full-sized adult blue whales. And they just move in unison, the boat and a blue whale on the left and the right. And they just cruised in unison for I think he said it was like 35 minutes. He cut it down to like 5 minutes of footage. It is the coolest animal interaction I've ever seen, just because of the size of the blue whales in comparison to the boat. But being on Elvin's, you know, what was it, a 14-foot or 16-foot little whaler with the humpbacks all around, kind of felt like that, where you're just like, I don't care if this whale knocks the boat over. Like, this is, I can die happy. This is so cool.
Very cool. But I'm wondering what that was about. I mean, was he almost caught in the middle of an intimate moment? Was he caught blocking those whales?
Well, he wasn't sailing it. No, because for a while it's just one whale. So it's just the whale on the left of the boat. I'm picturing the drone shot, basically. And then just sort of coming in, just flanking in, you see this other whale kind of coming up and coming towards them. And they're about, 10 feet on either side of the boat. I think they were just checking it out. It was fucking cool as shit. And of course, Mark, being, a world-class underwater photographer, his holy grail is to capture blue whale mating, because it's never been filmed.
Wow.
Right.
And so he was like, he's like, I had the drone up. It's like the best thing I've ever filmed. But in my head, I'm like, how quickly could I get the camera in the housing, get a dry suit on, and get in the water, just in case they quickly sneak in a little cheeky fuck.
I mean, the problem is something that big, even though they move relatively slowly, it's still faster than you can swim, right?
Yeah.
So,
God, yes.
How do you sort of hang off the side of the boat and you drag? How do you do it?
I don't know.
It's got to be perfectly timed.
I'm sure it's assumed that they dive down really, really far, and that's why it's never been filmed. And there's so few of them, but.
Yeah,
all those things. I mean, we've seen enough whale coitus to know how it generally works, but it's still, it's still something. The fascinating thing is so often when there's competition, it involves the female avoiding being drowned, particularly when there's no size disparity in her favor, like there is, for example, with birds of prey and sharks. The females are always much bigger. But in this instance, they don't have that advantage, and they've got to breathe air. And you hear the opportunities for non-consensual threesomes when someone's on the top, and particularly right whales, and there's this great fleshy, boat mast comes over, and the next thing you know, it's cetacean DPP.
I'm getting horny. Calm down.
I'm just saying, it's a fascinating, and it's so common in some instances that early biologists actually thought that threesomes, 2 males and 1 female, was how whales reproduced. That's how common.
No kidding.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they're on the surface, they're inverted. The female's vulva is presented to the sky.
Oh boy.
The penises are obviously prehensile, like a kangaroo penis. So
Can you say penis one more time?
Penis.
Oh.
He did it.
And they're huge, and anywhere from 4 to 12 feet, depending on the species of whale. And
just one basketball hoop length, but yeah.
So you got these two. Actually, one is already in full coitus, and the other one is trying to get in there, and it's not easy for the pair already, mid mate to break away. So it's kind of a sneaky threesome. But as I said, it's quite extraordinary how often it happened. And it was observed, and it was believed to be that's how they could do it.
It's interesting. I have a fun fact. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but whenever I have a relevant animal fact, I like to just throw it out, even if it's not directly on topic. Did you guys know that when a male dog mounts the female and the penis inserts in, it actually, the tip of the penis, it turns into like a ball so that the penis can't come out, and they're stuck in there, so the female can't pull away. I always thought that was pretty interesting. Never knew.
I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that like ducks have their corkscrew mechanism, and cats have the sort of barbs that come out.
Yikes!
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Rhino has a massive set of wings.
Which does?
The Sumatran rhino.
Okay.
You ever seen? It's got to be the most remarkable mammal penis I know. It's huge, a beautiful curved S.
Okay. An S. That's shit.
So what happens is that you probably know this, but rhino penises generally point backwards, not directly, but they're folded because they particularly the forest rhinos.
Okay.
So the Javan and the Sumatran and the Indian. So what happens is, their penises are obviously huge. They're a huge animal.
Yep.
But they actually fold up, and so they're doubled over in the flaccid state, and the penis tip itself is pointing backwards. So when they urinate, and it is enormous, like a broken fire hydrant, when they urinate backwards, which is how you would see a female mammal pee,
right.
behind a horse or whatever.
Sure.
So you think, oh, that's a female, and then you go, well, hang on, why is she so well endowed? And it's a male. And I know that because I was pissed on by a Sumatran rhino, thinking I was in a safe place.
Behind it.
Yeah. You always want to stand right behind the rhino.
Yeah. I was at a safe distance. It's quite a famous rhino called Harapan, who is part of the project, was here in the States and has gone back to Indonesia. But the point was, don't stand behind any rhino or directly in front of it. But what happens is the penis is tucked up like that, so it's charging through the spiky undergrowth. He doesn't drag his schlong all over.
There you go.
Yeah, and damage himself. Doesn't drag his tender phallic stamen on the
That's your new
aggressive
nickname. Tender phallic stamen. TFS, baby.
But at the moment arrives and he mounts the female, of course, and enters a turgid state, this great sweeping pink S, and these giant wings, about a couple inches across and a few inches long, come out either side. And the key
like
is
a velociraptor from Jurassic Park.
In many ways, as inspiring and as elegant as Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, but of course it's just a big dick. But here's the thing. It's incredibly important that he achieves coitus, achieves penetration before the wings are fully inflated. The wings, like many aspects of the most penis structure, are designed to remove the sperm of his competitors and also to ensure the female is prevented from rushing away before
Is that why humans have a head on their penis? It's to remove other sperm?
Correct. Yeah,
I've never known this.
Yeah, a lot of sperm scrapers.
That's actually gross. I respect myself less now. Don't be so jealous, man.
I was planning on coitus later tonight, and now I'm thinking about bailing.
Nah, you're gonna be too drunk, mate. That ain't happening.
I've had 1 1/8 cocktail. I spilled the other 7/8.
So promiscuity and sperm competition, all these things. And social dynamics, they all affect penis shape and length. And that one of the reasons we don't have, like the aforementioned whales and various other animals don't have a penis bone, is that we are capable of a proper intellectual courtship that would allow for foreplay and arousal and successful reproduction. Whereas anytime you turn your back on the jungle, something's going to come and rip your neck out.
Yeah,
you got to get it on. So that's why you have the bone. So it's instantly erect, and a whole lot of. But all the different shapes, they all are a reflection of those dynamics.
Do you guys think that the new show, The Naked and Afraid in Love or whatever, which we talked about in the last podcast, they might evolve a bone in their penis since they're just going to have to get to it and get out?
I mean, based on the study that Bradley was referring to earlier, it sounds like they will quickly and instantly grow a penis bone. So I like to extrapolate things out. Wait, so we need to have a winner for this game. So here's the last question.
Yeah, we're tied.
It's tied.
That was yesterday.
Whoever gets this right wins the game. Will it be the biologist, the professional, or the idiot? Ooh. An insect is responsible, I said, for the first form of flight on Earth. The way that it flies, its wing structure, et cetera, et cetera. It's the first flying thing on Earth. What insect am I referring to? Let's let the idiot go first, since we're tied.
What insect are you referring to?
Try and get this right. Don't say bird.
I'm not. Fuck off. I know a bird is an arachnid.
Frisbee.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to go with gosh damn it. I'm going with a moth because there's so many of them. They're a caterpillar first. So they just don't fly automatically. They had to, maybe it's wrong, but I'm going moth.
Okay. No, it's a perfectly reasonable guess. Bradley.
I'm not going to go moth. I'm going to say that time it's had to be something that was hatched in the water. I'm going to say dragonfly.
We have a winner, BTG. You are correct.
Nice.
It is the dragonfly.
Damn it. You should have known. They look like fucking old. They look like dinosaur era birds.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know at one point in time, they reached a wingspan of almost 3 feet.
Oh my God.
I don't like that at all.
During the oxygen, I think it's a Precambrian explosion. It was just unbelievable. But I'll tell you something else about dragonflies. You probably know this, but they have the highest success rate of any predator on the planet by virtue of their extraordinary visual acuity.
Wow.
And they have a greater hunt success rate of any carnivore. So they deserve a little bit more respect.
I love dragonflies. Honestly, I had no idea that they were the first flying creature on Earth. That's correct.
As far as we know, and as far as the good people at the Smithsonian are concerned, yes. Bradley might disprove that on his next book. Who the fuck knows? But as of right now, it was dragonflies.
It was a different thing.
Fascinating shit.
I mean,
they're pretty amazing.
They kind of designed helicopters a little bit based on how the dragonfly moves, right? Because they can hover, they can go side to side, they can go forward, back.
More complex, though. More complex, yeah.
For sure.
We couldn't engineer any material to perform the way those double wings perform. And so we had to go with a spinning option because we just don't have the technology and the material strong enough to handle those kind of stresses.
Sure.
Dude,
yeah, they're pretty fucking incredible, man. I'm doing a project right now, which I will be definitely excited to let the Brosners know about once we get closer. It's going to come out next year. But doing a lot of stuff up in Yellowstone. And so I've just been wormholing on the mammals, the predators, the insects, everything. Been just heavy into the salmon fly nymph. I don't know if you guys know about this, but
of course not.
the life cycle of the salmon fly is it kind of made me sad a little bit because
why?
they're the super, the eggs go into the water. They're basically, typically in Yellowstone Lake or river there. And they're this really cool larvae that has this whole life underwater. And then they come out, they basically ditch their they ditch this weird shell. And then they're a salmon fly and they're around for about 48 hours. They fuck nonstop and then they die. So it's like this huge gestational period. And then they're finally their final form, and it's like a day to 2 days.
Well, that's actually pretty generous, though. There are a number of lacewings that are only alive in adult form for 6 hours.
Really?
So but what's interesting is, and some of them in adult form don't have mouths or anuses. So you have animals, the whole, you eat your shit and you die. That's not necessarily true. There are a number of, even the whole excuses like assholes. No, not everybody has one. There are a number of animals. Atlas moths don't have them. These lacewings don't have them. Antlions don't have them. Which brings me to a more important topic, and that is the flatulence. As we discussed before, everything with a digestive tract can fart, right? Doesn't matter what it is. Insect, marine animal, everything farts. The whole world. It's what brings us together, except from those few elite snooty animals who have a very short lifespan. But I was going to tell you this. In nature, I was making this point the other day on an Instagram post about how everything that looks beautiful is ugly in some way, and everything that looks ugly is beautiful in some way. That's one of the things I love about nature.
Yeah.
Never be put off by the initial appearance of something. It's probably amazing, and you'll love it if you give it the time of day. And often, the gateway of horror and grossness brings you to something amazing. One of the most amazing things that ever happened to me was a result. Close. A result of the worst fart I've ever smelled.
What? Oh, God. All right. Brosners, pour yourself a cocktail. I have a feeling you're in for a good story.
So about, I don't know, I'm 7 knee surgeries past this time, and I remember I getting my parachute license, and I haven't had it done yet. But I used to make a point, even if I had a really busy year, I hadn't gone skydiving, on my birthday, I would always go out and do some skydiving, just to keep the sense of being alive and how great it is, and also to connect me back to my roots. I miss a time when that's what I used to do for a living, albeit covered in bombs. Anyway, the point was, I went down to this drop zone, and it was actually at a naval air station, and it was right by the coast, which is great for naval air training, but terrible for skydiving because you get very changeable weather and lots of precipitation. So it wasn't a great place to have a skydiving drop zone. But we drove down there with my close friends who I served with, and the first day we get there, no good. Windy, cloudy, no jumping. We went out, got on the piss, as we would say, and the next day came back, sat on the drop zone, sweating out the alcohol, didn't get up again, horrible. Comes the third day, and the last day, and it's cold and dark and cloudy, and it's like, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. And we have been drinking and eating crap food now for 2 days.
Yeah.
Finally, there's a break in the cloud, and they say, if you get up now, you can go. And we just ran in the plane. It was a small Cessna. There was just 5 of us in there, and up they go to 12,000 feet. Well, the term we use in Australia is called a lager bomb, and that is a alcohol, yeast, and meat infused
worse than
flatulence.
ammonia.
And I want to say, look, I don't blame anybody. I'm just going to say all of us were guilty of rectal crimes at that time.
Yeah.
Small plane.
And we get up there, and they said, you're good to go. And then as we line up on our run-in, they say, no drop, no drop, no drop. And the clouds have come over. And I was going to vomit. It was so bad, I was going to vomit.
Just because so many people were dropping lager bombs.
It wasn't a carpet bombing of lager bombs. It was like being in the movie Centipede. But, and I just like this, I can taste it. There was a texture to the air. That's how rich it was.
Oh, good God.
Listen,
And I'm just going to be sick. And I just...
Sorry, go ahead.
So we're just circling and circling, hoping for the weather to break. And now we're circling for 30 minutes. And I am just using every hardcore technique I can to distract myself from pain, because it's reached a level that if I even give into a picometer of surrender, I'm just going to projectile vomit on the inside of the plane.
God.
And finally, it said, no, it's no good. No drop, come down. And I just said, fuck that.
Just jumped out of the plane.
And I said to the pilot, we're over the Naval Air Station. Can you get a beat on the Met Tower with your Doppler? And he said, oh yeah. And I knew where that roughly was. It's illegal to jump through a storm cloud. And I just went, fuck it. Tell me when you're over the tower. He said he was, and I just went, and I jumped out of it. So because of that disgusting experience, I managed to check off one of my ultimate bucket lists, which was to fall through a cloud. And now I know what it's like. And it's beautiful. From above the cloud, beautiful white, puffy snowfields.
Yeah, that must be intense, yeah.
And when you drop through it, it gets dark almost instantly. Was a very dark gray, not quite black. You have no sense of up or down except for the moisture over your goggles, which is streaking like a windscreen in different directions. Very easy to get disorientated. Incredible sensation. Lucky there was no lightning. And then I came out only about 500 feet against minimum opening height, and just popped open. And then, of course, you hit the rain.
Yeah.
It's actually really painful.
Jeez.
But it was one of the most beautiful, amazing experiences of my life. I was lucky enough to do it another time just because I wanted to make sure I really did experience it correctly the first time. I wasn't overwhelmed. But that I wouldn't have had that opportunity for natural wonder had I not been about to die of my mate's farts inside that plane.
So
Dude,
you definitely wouldn't
wild.
have jumped if that plane wasn't filled with basically the most deadly, noxious, disgusting gas you've ever smelled.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we'd all been happy and healthy and chatty, we'd have just been talking to your mates from a joyride. I mean, it would have been fine. And remember, this is pre-smartphones.
Yeah.
So you can't be, words with friending, in those, that doesn't happen. But no, I've had countless times when we've gone to altitude and then something happens and you got to get down.
Yeah.
I remember up at Byron Bay, there's used to be a great little grass airfield there called Tiagra. And I remember one time they had this plane that had just been refurbished, but it was just not flatulence, it was just belching black smoke. And skydivers and paratroopers and all that, they tend to be a little bit superstitious. And they're like, oh, it's no good, the plane's no good. And the pilot's going, no, it's fine, we just had it, overhaul, it's great. And they'll get to the end of the day and the guys go, okay, we're going to take the plane to the shop and have the engine tweak, see what's going on. Does anybody want to get to altitude and jump out on the way? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go. Free jump. Thank you. And my mates go, oh, no, that plane's going to crash. I'm like, who gives a shit? We're wearing parachutes.
Jumping out of it.
it's like that's literally someone else's problem. Because it gets 1,000 feet, I'm done. I'm safe. So, yeah, it was funny. But my larger point is that gross story is much about nature. Often the hardship and the suffering, us bouncing around and puking in that boat, Pat, and heavy seas, getting down the Hood Inlet, the stink of the bears, all this stuff that's frightening and sometimes revolting, often a gateway to some of the best moments of your life.
Zero question. And I think,
for sure.
The average age of our brosners is about 23, and that's because my mom and stepdad listen, so they bring it up. But good piece of advice from BTG, which is do things that are scary and gross, and you'll have great stories when you're in your 40s, like us.
But don't be stupid. Do it safely.
Yeah, do it legally. Don't jump illegally through a fucking... That guy lost his pilot's license thanks to you.
Yeah. He's Navy. I mean, no one cares.
Retep, let me get the jingle, because it's time.
It's time. By the way, who won that game? Just
Bradley Trevor Greive, because he got fucking dragonfly, and you said moth. You said the Venezuelan poodle moth.
Oh, I was so close, mate.
I think I know what time it is.
What time is
Do
it?
you know what time it is?
For what?
Battle Royale. So
How long have you been doing that?
maybe about 6 weeks. One of the Brosners made some drops for us. So this was Forrest's idea, and then I saw a couple comments on the last YouTube of people asking for this. It's Forrest's fault that he's not here. He's out fishing like an asshole. No, he's out on some adventure. But we're going to be in the studio a week from today doing a whole bunch of podcasts, bonus podcasts, all that. But here's the Battle Royale. Aquatic Battle Royale. You can pick
shit.
whatever quality. You don't have to do head, body, fit, nothing. Whatever 3 attributes of underwater animals we are creating them in a snake draft, and they're going to fight.
Okay, so we're picking 3 animals.
Attributes of 3 different animals, whatever attributes you want. Could be the size, could be the power, could be the bite force, whatever you want to do.
Into one animal that's going to fight.
Yes, that's what we've always done.
Okay,
this is number 75.
I don't
mate.
listen. You're explaining it poorly. I just want everybody to know that you've explained it poorly.
I did have a pretty stiff cocktail. Let's let our guest go first for the underwater aquatic battle royale BTG.
Okay,
Man, that is something. Okay. This will make sense later.
Okay, he's got a plan.
But I am going to start with the paradoxical anglerfish, specifically the female,
Okay.
who, as you know, absorbs the males into its body. So the males come to mate. The males are tiny, teeny, tiny things, and they bite onto the female. Their jaws fuse. Eventually, blood vessels form through their mouths, and their body gets absorbed into the female until it's just this vestigial set of gonads that ejaculates milt on command when she's receptive. My point is, we have a large fish covered in about 100 other fish, so it's a multi-being fish.
I like what you're doing. It's scary. You're going for intimidation factor. It's freakish.
Yeah,
and
like
it's I like where you started there. I'll go next here. Go ahead.
My point is, as I add other qualities to it, you will see that I now have 100 and you have 1.
Understood.
Okay.
I'm going to go next. And this also will make sense later because this is going to seem like very, very low-hanging fruit.
Much, much later.
When you're drunk, when you're microdosing shrooms later, Brosners, you'll get this. But I'm going to start with just the body, the pure mass, and I need this for a reason, of a blue whale, maxing out at 330,000 pounds, 90 feet in length. I'm going for pure size for my first quality. I'm taking the size and body of a blue whale. Retep, you're up for 2.
So what does it say about someone who's always desperate to look bigger in some way? What does that mean again? I don't remember.
I'm not sure.
They're compensating for something. They're compensating. Okay. So the first ability that my underwater sea monster will have is going to be that of a cuttlefish, because the cuttlefish will be able to rapidly blend their body in with its surroundings. Not only that, the cuttlefish has the ability to communicate with other cuttlefish using a complex series of instructions that are communicated by the rapid changes and flashes of body color. I will be controlling an army of cuttlefish, my friends.
No, you only get one?
No, I have one. I have one cuttlefish that will be intelligently communicating with an army of cuttlefish that are just in the ocean hanging around, commanding them to do my intelligent cuttlefish's
Unfortunately,
bidding.
this battle is in a controlled environment that's fenced off. So anyway, what's your next pick?
That was not explained at the beginning.
Okay, I'll give that to you then.
My next pick is it needs to have some sort of offensive weapon.
Yes, it certainly did. Because right now it's very good at communicating.
And blending in with its surroundings, you fool. It's very defensive and can communicate.
No.
Okay.
It's the wallpaper of the deep. I get it.
Yeah, but now I got another pick. And it's going to fucking destroy both of your animals with the ability of a pistol shrimp.
Ooh.
Okay.
That's right.
Yep. Okay.
We all know what that ability is, right?
We've certainly talked about it for quite a while.
The equivalent of when it comes to the size, because now I can pick any size. So let's just say I had the blue whale. It's already taken out, which is ridiculous. Pat picked the biggest animal.
We know what you're doing. It's going to have a very powerful thing.
It's basically like Thor fucking or Zeus throwing a lightning bolt at you, is all I'm saying.
Sure.
Very nice.
Way to use something that I used a couple weeks ago.
Camouflage, you won't even see it. Commanding an army of cuttlefish.
So I have this creature that's got the body of a blue whale. It is massive. The biggest animal that's ever lived on Earth.
Okay.
It does have a 10-foot penis. What I'm going to do now is it has the ability to release a tremendous amount of slime. I'm taking the ability of a hagfish. So
nice.
A hagfish, as we've talked about on the show many podcasts ago, releases this incredibly sticky, gooey slime. It's impenetrable. It is disgusting. It entraps other things. But here's why I'm picking it. A single hagfish will release up to 400 times its own body volume in slime. And the way it does that is it releases the chemical, it mixes with the water, and it turns to slime. So with my 300,000-pound blue whale, it will, in a single fell swoop, be able to release 1.2 billion pounds of slime that will entrap Peter's tiny cuttlefish.
No.
And Bradley's
won't even know where my cuttlefish
anglefish.
is. No, it'll trap
won't
itself.
need to.
How's it going to get out of its own? How's it going to get away from its own slime?
Pounds.
Now you have a fatal flaw in your design.
Thanks, Brosners, for voting for me. BTG, what are your last two?
Wow. Again, it's a size compensation. And it's basically, you come up with the substance akin to someone just jerking off in a bath. I don't know.
A billion pounds of it. A billion pounds of it.
That's what you tell your friends. You still only have one kid. I'm just saying there can't be that much going on. I want size as well. Now we're going to have to ramp this up. I'll take the sperm whale, which gives me the largest of the toothed whales, which is an advantage, which come to it. But really, it's about size and possibly, as we believe, some of its weaponized soft tissue for its echolocation, which can also be painful and distracting. So we have a very deep diving marine animal. It's toothed, plus it's got a billion heads, and the laydown misere will happen on my next pick.
And you're up.
Okay.
What is your next pick? You go for two now, BTG.
That's right, the snake draft. I keep forgetting. Good. It's size appropriate bobbit worms coming out of the mouth of every single one of my many hundreds of male paradoxical danglefish the size of a fucking sperm whale. So now I have a disco ball of hate just cruising through a many-headed submarine with pinking shears that can slice through your jizz blob and rip the guts out of whatever it is. So this is probably the most extraordinary, omnidirectional, weaponized marine creature in the history of the world.
I mean, look, the bobbit worms are quite...
Wow.
That's creepy. It's gross. A billion pounds of jizz is going to be tough to get through. But in case my animal hasn't already won, I'm going to also give it the special ability of a nudibranch. And what this ability is it's going to go around, it's going to consume chemicals from other animals that it eats, take those chemicals and weaponize them as stinging output that's going to sting and hurt their animals after they're trapped. I actually don't know how the nudibranch delivers its poison, but it's the ability. Go ahead. Explain. Help me out, BTG.
Okay, first of all, it's a nudibranch. Secondly, it's actually a fascinating setup. You're referring specifically to the blue angel, right? With the little wings on it, and yeah. So what happens is it's actually more than one animal put together, just in the same way a Portuguese man of war is actually multiple animals. So the stinging aspect of it, I think they're called hydras. I could be wrong about that, but that's actually a separate animal that's working together with the marine animal itself. But yeah, they do. They repurpose the toxins into a venomous barb, which can be injected into it. and when agitated, and you should never pick them up when you see them on the beach.
Imagine that and a blue whale. Ooh. Peter, what's your last quality here?
Well, my animal is a killing machine already with the ability of the pistol shrimp, the defensive capability of blending in with its surrounding of a cuttlefish, as well as communicating intelligently with an entire army of cuttlefish to destroy your ridiculous...
What was your last... I don't even know what your last thing was. What was your last pick?
I had
pistol shrimp and a cuttlefish. So basically, he's swimming through the depths, snapping his fingers like the cast of West Side Story. That's what I'm seeing.
That's what I'm.
Well, I mean, but once the size of my next animal comes in,
okay, can you say
if you shut your fucking mouth, I will, Pat, because your hagfish, all it does is sit there and be a piece of meat with a barb in its butt. My final animal is to go along with the predatory nature of my already fucking vicious animal. A great white shark. Very fast, large. So now you have basically an animal that has been engineered by God since the beginning of time to be one of the most efficient killers, not only in the sea, but in the entire world. Mixed with the camo ability of the cuttlefish and ability, yes. And finally, the ability to shoot you in the face with a lightning bolt the size of Thor's penis.
Okay, I don't know how big Thor's penis is. I'll leave that to you. But so what I'm hearing is basically it's Sharktopus who likes jazz. Is what you've decided.
That is literally, it's snapping. It keeps a good rhythm. Brosners, let us know. And listen. You guys love BTG, and I feel like he gets a lot of votes because he's like the new shiny toy. But, come on, think about 1 billion pounds of slime. But who do you vote for? Do you vote for BTG's paradoxical anglefish and its ability to swallow up hundreds of other fish? It's the size of a sperm whale and has weaponized soft tissue and bobbit worms coming out of the mouth. Or do you want my...
Giant bobbit worms.
Giant bobbit worms. Would you like my blue whale that's spitting out 1 billion pounds of slime and has the ability to consume stinging animals and use their chemicals? Or Peter's, it looks like a white shark. Wow, it's got the 1,000 jaws. It's got the clasping pincers of a pistol shrimp, and it can change color, and it's got about 200 cuttlefish swimming behind it.
You're
that's
ridiculous.
Nice. Changing color means that
thousands
you never
of
have
cuttlefish, and it doesn't just change color; it changes
BTG,
texture as well.
Really quickly, BTG, could a cuttlefish ever keep pace with a white shark swimming in the ocean?
No.
Okay, so that's useless.
This is a combined animal. The shark and the cuttlefish are one creature. That's
right, but we're not having one. This is a one-on-one-on-one, right? This isn't an army.
Of course it is. No, of course it is. That is.
It's one-on-one-on-one. It's the size of a great white, the ability of the fucking cuttlefish, and the pistol shrimp. The way that you describe my animal is disappointing.
Peter,
I'm disappointed
been so
in you.
rude on this podcast that I'm never doing it again.
I'm sorry. I mean,
I just want to say this to the bros: is before you vote. I'm not even going to mention the Retepian choice because it is Retepian.
It's awful.
But
it's bad.
Before you vote
wonderful.
For Pat's
winner,
Jizzblob, just have a look. Go online. There's a video of, I'm not sure if it's a great white or a tiger shark, just picking off a hagfish and eating it. They don't always fire off. They're actually threads, these giant chemical threads, which absorb enormous amounts of water. They don't actually work every single time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the jizz blob is going to be less impressive than Pat imagined. Who would have thought?
Yeah. No question.
Whereas these giant bobbit worms coming out of 100 heads, the size of a sperm whale. I mean,
the pistol shrimp is going to knock you all unconscious immediately. Also, hagfish.
You keep the bait for us while we're killing each other.
Hagfish is eaten by many a mammal, and even fish that can expel its slime. It's not dangerous. It's terrible.
Can I just make one point to you, Retep?
No. Good night, everyone.
I want to point out that all the pistol shrimp they kill animals smaller than themselves. And you pick the smallest of all the animals.
Yeah, but it's the size of a great white with the same speed and ferocity. Fuck, I don't know.
Anyway, guys, Retep's drunk. Bradley, thank you for doing it. We want to have you back.
Thank you, Bradley. Yes.
When your Netflix show drops in about a month. Also, Bradley is one of my favorite follows on Instagram. Your handle is Tasmanian_Grizzly with 2 Z's. It really is a fun follow. You learn a lot, see lots of cool pics.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Come and give me some love. I'm late to social media. I'm largely incompetent at it. But unlike my esteemed colleagues, my statements are factually correct.
That is true. You're an author. You research it. Peter, where can people find extra Wild Time stuff?
I've seen much worse Instagram play than Bradley does. You're good at social media, but you should change your name to Mr. Grumpy. Go find this podcast on YouTube and anywhere audio podcasts are listened to. You can find those links, thewildtimespodcast.com/info. If you want to check out the Patreon bonus pods, there's going to be a dozen, a baker's dozen out soon, with many more to come. Check that out at patreon.com/wildtimespod. That's patreon.com/wildtimespod. Love you guys. I won Battle Royale. Eat my dick.
Who did you say that to? Is that to the Brosters?
I don't know. Is that like a request or a demand or an order? I feel like, I'm confused and
I'm sorry, Bradley. I'll never bother you again.
You know what's funny is a lot of nudibranchs in those old fatworm group also have double penises, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Fits in with the theme of this episode.
It feels like something that you're always looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Good night, everybody.
Wild Times.